Hey, I'm Quincy and I'm a radio personality, but just like you, I'm always wanting to make better health choices for myself and of course for my family. Now that's why I've teamed up with my friend Dr. Dean Tyndall and the fine folks of New Life Naturopathic, the creators of new-lifeweightloss.com, to bring you a podcast focused on giving you the information you need to make the best health decisions for you and your family. Now, that's going to be without sway from what mainstream medicine has become. Now, this podcast, Pursuit of New Life, we're going to release one each Friday. And we're going to focus on debunking the mainstream medicine myths now associated with naturopathic, holistic medicine, while giving you clear insight into ways you can make your health a lifestyle and not a jump from fad diet to fad diet. Experts in the fields of biochemistry, chiropractic, physiology, women's health, and much more will weigh in on a range of topics, all designed to open your eyes, expand your knowledge, and bring you to new life. Now be sure to subscribe to Pursuit of New Life on all the podcast platforms, and also follow us on YouTube at newlifenaturopathic.com, and be joining us every Friday for Pursuit of New Life. Welcome into another episode of Pursuit of New Life. I have the New Life Naturopathic team with me, and that is a wonderful opportunity for you to join us because you get to get all the knowledge, and we are glad that we get to be with you every week on Fridays. And if you want to get part of that, if this is maybe your first time coming across, you can make sure that you subscribe, and that'll give you the alert that it comes out every Friday on your favorite podcast platform. And then, of course, you can find us on YouTube at New Life Naturopathic. And today we are going to talk about vitamin D, and we get that, the first thing I always think of about vitamin D is the sun. So I guess we'll talk a little bit about that and other ways that we can get vitamin D and what happens if we don't get enough and all of that good stuff, Dr. Tyndall. So why don't you get us started and see where we go with this topic today?
Okay. Well, vitamin D is a very, 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 very essential nutrient that our body actually will make when we get exposed to the sun. Reason we're kind of talking about this time of the year is it's this time of the year that people in most cases need to start, I can speak English, need to start supplementing with, because we're going to start getting into, not yet, but pretty soon we're going to start getting, the days are going to get shorter and the days are going to get colder, which means that we're going to cover up and we're going to stay inside and we're not going to get out in the sun. Even if we do go out in the sun, we're going to be covered up from head to toe because it's cold. So important to have that vitamin D levels up. A lot of times in the labs, when you're running your labs, one thing that's really important is the labs your range will run from like 30 to 100. Optimal levels of vitamin D are between 60 and 80. Some will have between 80 and 90, but we like to see our patients at about 70. That means that your tank is full of gas and that you're going to be able to do everything you need to do. Your immune system is going to be in top shape. You're going to be able to absorb calcium and all kinds of stuff that you need. So it's going to be very important. Because when the lower that vitamin D level gets, and that's why part of it is why you'll see a flu season or sick season in the summer, or not summer, but in the winter, because as your vitamin D levels go, your immune system goes with it.
Well, we've talked about immune system recently enough. Most people, if you missed that one, you can make sure you check that out on the podcast platforms and on YouTube. You can find that episode and catch up. But for vitamin D, for a lot of us, we talk about sun exposure, but some people, even year round, whether it's cold, hot, whatever it is, don't want to be in the sun. Mm-hmm. So are there ways that we can make sure we're getting good source, certain foods that we can make sure we're eating that can help us with vitamin D as well?
Yeah. So let me see here. I had it up here. What did I do with my list? I had a big list. Heck. Big one is fish, oily fish. Eggs is a good source. These are some things that a lot of people don't eat though, but eggs, egg yolks, especially beef liver that people aren't eating. Fish liver, people aren't eating. Good fatty fish that come from the ocean. Again, a lot of people aren't eating because they're eating farm-raised fish. Canned fish like herring, pickled herring or herring and sardines. Again, people kind of aren't eating that kind of food. So usually what it comes down to is that the best place to get your vitamin D is, again, the sun and probably supplementation, and making sure you have a good food source of vitamin D.
Mm-hmm. Well, with that being said, Miriam, I know you wanted to talk a little bit about how we can supplement vitamin D, and then also sometimes location matters a little bit when it comes to our vitamin D exposure. I heard you guys talking about that a little bit as we were getting started for that. So if you want to give us some perspective there, let's get started with Miss Miriam.
All around the world. So, some people hardly get any sun exposure. Alaska being a good example. And there's, some people around the world that literally get zero. I think there's somewhere, maybe in Iceland, I forget exactly where, somewhere in the North Pole where, there's a few days straight where the sun doesn't come out at all. And, or vice versa. So that's always interesting. But, you also have to keep in mind the other aspect of sun exposure and the dangers of the sun and UV radiation. So, always wear that sunscreen, especially from noon to 2 p.m. Eastern time, or the equivalent thereof. And, just always keep in mind that balance. Pretty cool thing nowadays. I know with iPhones now you can look at the UV index to kind of look at, how much UV exposure you might be having at different times of the day. So, definitely keep in mind, even though the sun is probably the easiest way to get vitamin D, you definitely want to do it, at certain peak times where the UV radiation isn't going to undo all the benefits of the vitamin D benefits.
Well, as with pretty much everything that we end up talking about, balance is key. So we got to make sure that we're keeping that in mind for sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yes. And for the people that are not getting as much sun exposure, which is also very good for your mental health as well. A lot of states that such as Oregon, that don't get as much sun exposure. A lot of those people end up, getting symptoms of depression and all of that stuff. So definitely good to, keep seeing your therapist, good to have your levels checked. Also, as far as supplementation, you definitely want to make sure that you're getting the best kind of your vitamins, whole food vitamins. You want to have your entire vitamin D complex, just kind of like with vitamin C. There's different parts, different forms of vitamins, and you want to have the entire vitamin complex, and whole food supplements can definitely help with that. We definitely offer vitamin D alone as a supplement if you're very low on that through standard process and or MediHerb. So definitely, things to keep in mind. And a lot of foods as well, just like Dr. Tyndall mentioned. I can't talk either. It's after
Look what you started, Dr. Tyndall.
Oh, no.
Well, we didn't get enough vitamin D from the sun today. That's what it is.
Yeah, exactly.
Dr. Stuber.
It's a little cloudy right now.
Right. It is a little cloudy. Yeah. Dr. Stuber, with your practice and people coming in, women, children, what are some of the things you see when it comes to vitamin D deficiency, or, people that ask questions about vitamin D? What are some of the things that you can give us perspective on this topic?
Well, the first thing I see is people are not aware that vitamin D is important, or they're not aware how important it is. And the other huge thing I see is right now, doctors are giving people D3 and K2 in a form for women to lose weight. And they get it from their pharmacy and their insurance pays for it. But the problem with it is it's synthetic. And I will say, like, one of the first things we check is vitamin D. I have yet in this practice to see any woman that has a good vitamin D level. And vitamin D is critical for, number one, healthy bones and healthy teeth. It helps minerals. It transports minerals into the cells. Secondly, vitamin D helps with your mood. Thirdly, vitamin D is very critical in fat burning, the whole fat burning process. So your body just doesn't function without it. It's critical for immunity. The big thing with there's three things. One is the depression that comes from lack of vitamin D. A lot of times with vitamin D supplementation, the right kind for food, the mood gets so much better. And again, the weight begins to come off. It's sort of like peeling the onion. People just sort of come alive. And a big thing is for years, it's been don't go in the sun, don't go in the sun. The sun causes cancer, the sun causes cancer. And like we say, everything in moderation. So 20 minutes in the sun 3 times a week is plenty. But another huge issue is people wear sunscreen. And when you wear sunscreen, it decreases the amount of vitamin D that your body produces. You just don't get enough sunlight. So with women and children, what do we do? We slather on, the sunscreen we don't want to get old. Our kids, we don't want them to get burnt. And again, like Dr. Tyndall said, it is very hard to eat adequately and get good vitamin D.
And do you think that, one of the reasons you were saying, a lot of people already have a low number when it comes to vitamin D, and a lot of people don't realize how important it is. Do you think that comes because we know sunshine is where it comes from mainly, and we think, well, I've been in the sun today, and we don't really know that time balance? I mean, I think that, because that was the first thing I thought of when we said, oh, vitamin D today, the sun, yay. So.
Well, I just think we're a culture that most people don't want to go in the sun. Kids are inside playing on their...
We've worked really hard to perfect inside, so we don't...
Air conditioning. I always said air conditioning is the curse.
I know, but I love it. I remember I'm the first person. I run hot. Maybe it's probably my age, but I'm not a sun person. Also, with a lot of medications, you shouldn't be in the sun. So there's a lot of things that prohibit people getting adequate vitamin D. I just don't think people are aware. People don't think about it. I'll tell you what happened to me today in practice. I had a young lady, very proactive, doing the right things, and her blood work came back, and she's taking vitamin D with the K2 from the pharmacy, the right dosage and everything for her. Her vitamin D level was 18.
And we just talked to Dr. Tyndall earlier that said optimum is between 60 and 80, and you said 18.
Okay. So it's proof that these vitamin D, K2, whatever they are, tablets just don't work. They're synthetic. The big thing now, too, is women weight loss. The weight loss centers, the doctors are all promoting D3, K2 for weight loss. And it's a big scam because, your insurance will pay for it. So it's a huge moneymaker, but you might just well throw it in the trash. You might just well go get garbage because it doesn't work. And again, you have to have the right form. I think Dr. Tyndall's going to cover that more. There's so many forms of vitamin D. We can only use certain kinds, and our liver does a lot of that work. So that's the other thing I see very frequently is, eventually we got to work on the liver and how vitamin D is metabolized, but it's critical to get those levels up. And, some people have to megadose on them. I know myself, I take vitamin D and I really have to work at it. I'm not a sun person, so I have to work to keep my vitamin D levels up. And again, the food sources are the number one way to get your levels up. I will say with children, this is very important. Vitamin D is critical for the nervous system to work. So science has proven that a lot of learning disabilities are due to lack of vitamin D or low vitamin D levels. So children, it's something that they don't check. When you go to the pediatrician, I have yet again in practice here to see any child where they ever even tested their vitamin D. So it causes depression in children. It also, during fetal development, they talk about folic acid, but they never talk about vitamin D. And you have to have vitamin D for the folic acid to even work. So
the only thing I remember vitamin D from my kids is the vitamin A and D ointment for changing diapers. That's all.
Also, you need to have the presence of A for the D to work properly. Also, so
I bought tubes of it.
I remember when I was little, they gave us the little vitamin D, vitamin A pills, which again they were synthetic. And like me, I had white little indentations in my teeth. They took them off the market because that was a side effect in children. But I guess the obvious thing people think of with vitamin D is they think bones. So in our children we gotta have vitamin D for healthy bones. They give them some kind of Flintstones with vitamin D, or the big thing too is dairy, right? Milk has vitamin D, and unless it's raw milk, it's not enough vitamin D. It just doesn't get absorbed. It's not utilized.
Well, that's one of the things we know about some of the supplements, like you're talking about the synthetic ones. Our bodies don't absorb what they're saying you're getting out of it anyway.
The big thing is I would like to challenge people to think about it and go get tested, because a lot of problems. The other thing, I was talking to a pain doctor, and he was telling me that, he started doing his research on vitamin D. And every single patient he sees, the first thing he gives his pain patients is vitamin D. And he uses the standard processed products. Now, this is in Iowa, but I just found that fascinating. He's like 80% of the people, their pain will stop with increased vitamin D, because vitamin D is integral. Again, you have to have it to absorb minerals, which makes your ligaments stronger. It increases your bone mass. It just makes you move better. And it gets rid of a lot of pain. So again, he uses it as a line of defense against chronic pain.
Yeah. Well, I remember taking the little chalk Flintstone vitamins, and I don't know if it did anything or not.
Yeah.
Miriam, did you ever have those, the little chalk ones, the little chewables?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, they were so tasty.
That's my memory.
We used to fight over what color and what,
which character.
Did I get Barney? Did I get Dino? We'd fight for Dino. Dino the dinosaur. Oh my God.
Well, that was about the end of it. Was you got the character. You didn't get the actual vitamin D very much out of that.
No, you didn't.
So Dr. Tyndall, let's talk a little bit about the science of this, and maybe even about, the sunlight side of what we're doing when we get vitamin D. And I think it was you or one of the others that mentioned earlier about how there are multiple types of vitamin D, but we only use certain ones. So let's get into a little bit of that today.
Okay. So there's 5 types of vitamin D, but the human body basically deals with 3 of them. So basically how it works is this is why, first thing I'm going to say too is we're just talking about vitamin D, but the key with everything is that you have to have a balance of all vitamins, minerals, and bioflavonoids and a whole bunch of stuff. That's why we really advocate the aspect of eating food, because there's stuff in food. There's microRNA in food that helps regulate your health. There's connective tissue. Like everybody's like, oh, I need collagen. I tell people, well, make sure you're digesting really well and eat meat, because guess where you get your collagen from? You break it down when you eat animal flesh. And you also want to have your organ systems healthy. So basically, but we're just gonna, like I said, so right now we're working on D, but what I'm trying to get at is don't run out and go, hey, I want to grab a bunch of vitamin D.
Right. Holistic approach. Yes. Holistic and balance.
So the D by itself is not a miracle. That's why they sell it as a weight loss, because people are looking for that magic powder, potion, or pill, and it does not exist. That's why we put our eating website together. I was just had some friends this last weekend for a wedding, and they were on the program. So their daughter came up to me. She's like, thank you very much for everything. And I said, what? She goes, I love your program. She lost 75 pounds. She started about 9 months, a year before the wedding.
Wow.
Eating healthy, and lost 75 pounds. She looked gorgeous at her wedding. She had, it felt good. And you could tell that she had a lot of energy and stuff. And she was very excited that, and she did it by eating real food, following her program, and then doing the exercise that you're supposed to do with it and stuff. But anyhow, back to the vitamin D. So basically how it works is, when your body's exposed to sunlight, especially UV rays. So kind of what Miriam said, you want to look at those optimal times, and then if you can get outside, and then optimal UV time, and then the other time that you're spitting out past that, maybe 30 to 45 minutes in the sun to get your vitamin D levels up, and you're going to be out there for several hours. That's where you may want to use some of them, especially the more natural skin blockers, or wear a loose long sleeve shirt so you don't burn yourself.
Mm-hmm.
But anyhow, vitamin D, sun hits the skin, and a very important other product in our body that our liver makes is called cholesterol. Mm-hmm. And vitamin D, UV rays interact with the cholesterol and make vitamin D, or what we call calciferol. That is then transported through your bloodstream to your liver, and it's stored in your liver. It's converted again to calcidiol, which means it's added another calcium to it. It's stored kind of inertly in the liver. It's not active form, so your liver can store it and build it up. We call it a fat soluble vitamin. So when you eat food, you want to make sure, again, the things that we run into is that with people who have bad livers or missing gallbladders, they can't absorb vitamin D because they're missing that, the bile to digest the fats to bring those vitamin D into the liver. So it's stored in the liver, and when our body needs it, it will release it, and it goes to the kidneys, and the kidneys transform it into calcitriol, which is the active form of vitamin D. So this is what I find is fascinating when you look at synthetic supplements, and you look on the label. You'll see on the label, it'll say on the front label, vitamin D3 with K2 in it, okay? But when you flip it over to the actual ingredients, it'll say calcitriol, which is not D3. D3 is calcitriol. So, so it's not the active form, but since eventually it may become the active form, they can market it as that. So you got to watch the marketing stuff. You got to be careful. All that craziness that goes along with, the things that we do here.
Yeah.
That's why, again, kind of always comes back to making sure you have people who knows what they're doing to help you out through this process, because it's very, very confusing. Most of your medical doctors have no clue. They know as much as the person on the street does, because they get most of their information from the TV commercials. They know very little about nutrition. They don't take any classes or courses on it. So they're guessing at it too. But yeah, so having healthy levels of vitamin D, healthy bones, reduces not just the flu, but other illnesses, reduces your diabetes risk, It's known for helping preventing cancer, balancing blood pressure, relieving stress. You need it for proper absorption of minerals, which Dr. Stuber mentioned. You need it during pregnancy for infant growth health. Again, something that Dr. Stuber mentioned. Healthy pregnancy, help to lose weight, and helps you to fight off depression. And there's a ton of other stuff that vitamin D does in our system that helps us to become healthy individuals.
Mm-hmm. And we did mention a few of these already. And if you're watching on YouTube at New Life Naturopathic, you're seeing what we have in front of us here. It seems, Dr. Stuber, you talked about having, when your female patients come in, and one of the things you've noticed is very rarely does anybody have a really good vitamin D level. It seems like the only time that we actually pay attention to that, or at least what I've seen from knowing women that talk about being pregnant and they want to make sure that they're doing all the right things, that's when they're worried about vitamin D.
The big thing is they talk about folic acid.
Yeah.
And they don't realize you have to have vitamin D with folic acid. It's just overall, it's not something people think about. And again, I really think a lot of that has to do with the American Medical Association and their aversion to the sun. That was, I'll never forget when I was first in practice. I met this dermatologist, and he told me, if you have blue eyes, you should never go out in the sun. Yet he was tan. I mean, he was like tan. And I said, well, you're tan. He goes, well, I know how to do it. I was like, what are you talking about? But I mean, over time, that sticks. My generation, it was when we were young, we tanned, but then by about 25, it was like, oh, don't go in the sun. It causes cancer. It causes all these terrible things. And then they made all the sunblocks, and not only are they toxic, you don't get the right UV rays. They just don't. And the higher the sunblock, the less you get. So people just don't think about it because it was squashed. That's how I really feel. Because when I talk to people, again, like I said, I've never seen a woman in this practice, when I analyze and look at their blood work, I've never seen a woman that had adequate vitamin D levels. Most of them are under 30, under 25, which, again, as Dr. Tyndall said, the medical institutions, it's if you're at 30, you're fine. Well, if you're at 30, you're sick. I mean, people don't feel good at 30, and they're chronically ill a lot of times. Like, I will see a person like, man, I just got over sickness and I'm sickness again. I'm sick again. Or they talk about, oh my goodness, I had COVID and then I had pneumonia and then I had this, then I had that. When am I ever going to get better? I have this high fever. That's another thing about vitamin D. It's scientifically proven to reduce fever. Like, if a person has a fever and they take 2 vitamin D and wait about 2 hours, the temperature will come down 1 degree to 2 degrees. That's been scientifically proven.
Wow.
The other thing about vitamin D is blood pressure. Wow. I've done this. It's proven, again, scientifically with studies, that a person with high blood pressure, if you give them 2 vitamin D, now I'm talking about good vitamin D, which we use standard process. So that's the reference that I have. You give them 2 vitamin D, wait about 30 minutes, and you retake their blood pressure, it'll be down 20%. Wow. So, I mean, you can knock at least 15, 20 points off that top number and bottom number. So, again, there's just so many things that are attributed to low vitamin D, and it's critical that people get it checked. Yeah. When you go to the medical doctor, you have to ask. It's interesting. In this area, they don't test it normally. Now, different areas, in some areas, again, it's all about pharmaceutical marketing. They will test it. Like north of here, Iowa, they test everybody automatically, but then they prescribe the garbage. So it's a waste of time. So, again, it's just critical for life's function. With women, that focuses on weight loss, immunity, depression, healthy children, and I was for chronic pain. What we do here is about function, the nervous system. In a lot of chronic pain, Dr. Tyndall, and vitamin D helps all those things.
Well, yeah, and if you're watching on YouTube on New Life Naturopathic, you're seeing right now a graphic about the deficiencies that you can see, like course, pale skin would be something because you're not in the sun enough in the first place. Some sleep changes, fatigue, your mood changes, which we've kind of addressed in this episode. You just talked about pain. You talked about where it could prevent the flu and things like that. So, I mean, there's a lot of things here that we're looking at and talking about when it comes to vitamin D and the importance of it. But as Dr. Tyndall pointed out a little earlier, it's not just vitamin D by itself. There's a lot of things that have to work with it. There's a lot of balance involved there. But I thought it was interesting that you brought up perception based on, advertising by the pharmaceutical companies and the medical doctors talking about staying out of the sun. We talk about some other things where, we're learning more about, and Dr. Tyndall even used that tone of voice when he said cholesterol, because most people think about all cholesterol being bad, but there's obviously plenty to talk about with that. That might take a whole nother episode. But we have to pay attention to some of the information and making sure that we're finding people like New Life Naturopathic to talk to about these issues, especially if you're having some of the symptoms that we're talking about. If your mood is something that it never improves, maybe you need to get that DNA testing that you can get at New Life Naturopathic and find out some of the things that are going on with you. So it looks like we've run out of time for this particular episode, but we want to make sure that that you can check out new-lifeweightloss.com. We call it weight loss, but it's really a lifestyle change. It's something that you need to make sure you check into because it's very, very affordable. It does all the great work for you as far as shopping lists and the right food to eat and get you in a great position. Great testimonial Dr. Tyndall shared about the lady getting ready for a wedding and starting out ahead of time and all the weight that was lost. And that's why it's marketed that way, but it is a lifestyle change, new-lifeweightloss.com. And of course, if you have any questions, you can email us, and a great place to do that is at contactnewlifenaturopathic@gmail.com. And I would love for you to do that so the team can respond and answer your questions. That's one thing about this team. They will definitely answer, and they will definitely not sugarcoat it, because we talked about, what was it, a couple weeks ago about, sugar being poison anyway. So we don't sugarcoat anything. How about that? We'll make sure we see you again next week. So make sure you're downloading and subscribing on your favorite podcast platform and finding us on YouTube at New Life Naturopathic. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you then again next time on Pursuit of New Life.
Thanks, Quincy.
Hi, Quincy.
Thank you.